Hi everybody, this is Z from Sad Panda Games, and I want to talk about something again. This is a little bit different than what I said before, what was before, but it's still on the same kind of topic. It's on World War II, the Call of Duty game, the new one that's coming out in a month, and that I'm super excited for. But there's another reason why I'm super excited for it that would make me even more excited for the game if it was actually to come to fruition. And that's, as you'll see in the title, cross-platform play. Now, a lot of people know what cross-platform games are, and that's basically, or what multi-platform games are, I should say. And multi-plat games are everywhere nowadays. You have games like Call of Duty and others that are on multiple platforms, such as on PC or Xbox or PS4. But there's one thing that is troubling, is that you can't play together. It's troubling, at least to me. It may not be troubling to everybody, and I can certainly see the reasons behind why certain companies like Sony don't want cross-platform play to happen. I get why they don't want us to have the ability to play with each other on different consoles or PC and console, playing together. I get the business reasons behind it, but those business reasons, to me, suck. While I understand the business perspective of it, I also don't think that it would affect sales as much as they think it would. See, because a lot of the time, when new games come out, there are essentially two kinds of people that make up a majority of the sales. These two kinds of people, number one, is the fanboys. And what I mean by fanboys, which you don't have to be a boy to be a fanboy, you can be a fangirl. That is a thing. I'm not trying to be sexist with it or anything, but anyway, fanboys are the first ones that make up a lot of sales. Why? Because fanboys are the ones who are completely, basically loyal to one platform or another. So, for example, someone who is extremely into Xbox, like they love the Xbox platform and love all the games that come out for it, or love a majority of the games that come out for it, and they love to play them on their Xbox. That's their preferred system, and they are extreme fans of the company for making the system, basically. This is true of everything. This is something that can happen for Nintendo, for Sony, and even for PC platforms, such as Origin or Steam. There are some people who are extremely loyal to one platform over another, though I don't get it. I mean, when I was younger, I was definitely a Nintendo fan, as I've said before, and could probably have been described as a fanboy at that point, because I absolutely loved Nintendo, and still do. I absolutely love them as a company, and I think they make great games. Most of the games that I've ever played on Nintendo have been first-party games or console exclusives that are extremely creative, and I absolutely love their play style. Even the old platformer games of Mario and things like that. I absolutely loved Mario when I was younger, and I still love Mario to this day. I even have an emulator on my computer where I can play some of the old Mario games that I can no longer play because I don't have an old Nintendo system anymore. But that's beside the point. They're the first people who go out and buy a system or a game for a system when it first comes out, usually. The other type of person that makes up a lot of sales, other than the average Joe who just buys whatever they want for their preferred console, are the people who wouldn't normally buy the game for any reason other than to play with their friends. While they may not make up a majority of the sales, they are definitely a pretty decent number, I would wager. So there are some people, for example, like what I have done in the past, is that I used to have consoles all over the place. Like I had pretty much every console that would come out, or I would actually, we can use this as a pretty good example. Before the Xbox One and the PS4 launched, my friends and I kind of got in this big debate the entire time before they launched as to which one we were going to get. Because we don't have the money to go out and buy just every console ever, and we knew we would eventually buy the other console, most likely, just so that we could play any exclusive games that came out for that console that we might like. But we wanted to figure out which one we were going to get first. And this is speaking just between the PS4 and the Xbox One originally at launch. And we took a lot of things into consideration. For one, we of course took into consideration the reveals of the systems back in 2013 when Xbox kind of flubbed it and PlayStation didn't. But that was only one factor. Even then, that didn't completely turn me off from having an Xbox One, though I didn't like the aspects of DRM, and I was definitely more on the Sony side of the fence at that point, because I definitely didn't want to have my, even though I do have internet access, I didn't want to have my system connect to the internet at least once per day, even if I just wanted to play my games offline. It just seemed bad. And a majority of gamers agreed that this was an extremely bad thing. And of course, when Xbox did their complete 180 on it, I was happy that they did that. I wasn't sad that they decided to go back on their word and not show solidarity in the fact that they are a company, and they didn't show solidarity in their decision to do this whole DRM thing. Solidarity is not a thing in the gaming industry, not really. People think that it's a thing. Fanboys have solidarity with their companies. They are solidly for that company, and a lot of the times very against all other platforms. But I'm not one of those people. I like all the platforms. I even like the consoles. I even like playing on the consoles. I think exclusives are terrible. I really wish that I could play them all on my PC. And to be honest, if I was being completely honest, other than handheld gaming, if I could play every game that comes out for Xbox or PS4 on my PC, I wouldn't even remotely entertain the thought of buying either a PS4 or an Xbox One. Except for in this situation, where you have a game that isn't cross-platform play, where you know your friends are going to get one specific system or a game on a specific system because of the advantages that system is going to have. Oh, by the way, we did go with the PS4 at launch. The other things we considered tied it up to make it to where PS4 came out the winner, both with price and their lineup of launch games. It was just more impressive than Xbox One's, in our opinion. So, to go back to cross-platform play, for example, here, one of the reasons why this is a very difficult decision for some people as to what system to get a game for is because one of the problems that Call of Duty games tend to suffer on the PC is their community. And by community, I mean their player base. Their player base tends to be quite a bit smaller than their console brethren. The console brethren seem to have quite a lot larger number of players per day than Steam or any other platform on PC for Call of Duty games in general. While I do understand the reasons for this, there's a lot of reasons for it. I mean, there's thousands of games out for the computer. Over 1 million gamers that are on the computer alone are spread out over thousands of games that they love playing. Some people only play one specific type of game and they don't deviate from that. Some people will play only one game. Some people may only play World of Warcraft or Dota or League of Legends or Smite. Some people may be like that, where they only play that one game and that's all they really want to play. And that's fine. They can have that. But then there are people like me who play a lot of different games and would love to be able to play these games online with their friends. So here comes the conundrum, where maybe you have a friend, like we do, that is kind of an Xbox fanboy. Maybe not to the extent. He's more of a console fanboy and likes all the consoles, but just doesn't really care for PC gaming. I get that he can have his opinion, and that's fine. And he can do whatever he wants and play on whatever he wants, but it does make it a problem when we want to play games together. Some games, it's not a problem, where they do have cross-platform play. PC and Xbox players can play together. It's not that big of an issue. It doesn't matter that I'm on PC and he's on console. We can still play co-op together. I do understand the problem when it comes to games like Call of Duty, that you're probably, anybody who's played Call of Duty probably knows this already, but having PC and Xbox players, or PC and console players in general, playing together could cause some problems. One of the biggest problems being the differentiation in control options, besides the business aspects of it, of course. But ignoring the business aspects of why cross-platform play probably won't happen for Call of Duty World War II, the other reasons are small at best. The controller variations are not that big of a deal. Why do I say they're not that big of a deal is because they could easily be solved. One of the biggest things that people would talk about is that the keyboard and mouse are superior at aiming. It's pretty much universally known that in a competitive shooter, keyboard and mouse win in aiming, and the precision that they can have with aiming a weapon or gun is just superior to that of a controller. But even though it's superior in that way, I don't think that it is superior in every way. Now, granted, it would give the person playing on computer an advantage over people playing with a controller. But that's the same could be said of just people playing on PC, as people on PC have multiple options for controls. You can use Xbox controllers, PlayStation controllers, and now even the Nintendo Switch Pro controller also works to connect to PC. Not many games support it directly, but it can be used. As well as the other varying control types that can be used on PC, such as flight sticks or even third-party controllers that have nothing to do with any of the main console generations. There's plenty of different control options on there. Plus, then you have also the differentiation between keyboards. Some people use mechanical keyboards that have a faster reaction time mechanically than keyboards that are membrane keyboards or just other keyboards in general. Same with mice. Some mice have a better DPI, and having a better DPI is going to have a better mouse. You're going to have faster reaction time, possibly even more precise movements than someone with the one that has a lower DPI. So, even though the controller differentiations isn't that large, there's a problem with consoles right now. I decided to look it up earlier today and find out whether or not Xbox One had full keyboard and mouse support, because I thought that they had said that they were going to try to implement that they were only months away from doing this. But even now, it doesn't have full keyboard support. Some games have some keyboard support, but no mouse support whatsoever. And other things like chat systems and things like that do fully support the keyboard. Now, there are different ways that you can make the Xbox or the PlayStation support a keyboard and mouse, but you have to buy a third-party peripheral to make this happen. And not many people are willing to shell over 70 or 150 or however much money it is to buy one of these third-party contraptions to make themselves be able to use the superior control method. So because they're not willing to pay this extra amount of money, they just deal with playing with the controller. So how is a way that we could rectify having the control differences be a problem? Well, that's easy. Give console players the option to use a keyboard and mouse. I'm not saying they have to. I'm not saying that they should use a keyboard and mouse. Just give them the option. Make that option completely available to players and allow them to be able to do it. And maybe, just maybe, they will. Now, some people would argue, but this would ruin the competitive scene on Xbox or PlayStation. This would ruin the competitive scene for Call of Duty on those games, because you wouldn't have people playing on an equal playing field. Well, the thing is, you already don't have people playing on an equal playing field. Why do I say you don't have people playing on an equal playing field? Well, because to have an equal playing field, everything has to be the same across the board. That's what it means. You have to have the same things for everyone. You have to give them all the same consideration to allow for them to be equal. Skill is something that is never going to be equal between players, but that's not what we're talking about. Though skill would be a factor in all of this, it's not the biggest. It would be one of the bigger ones between crossplay and things, and it is a big, big reason why people win on equal playing fields. It's just because simply they are more skilled than their competitors. But you don't always have an equal playing field, even in competitive scenes like this, because even if you're not talking about like big major tournaments, if you're just talking about playing online with other people, you have people that have different internet speeds. You have people that are playing the game on a console that is connecting wirelessly to the internet rather than wired. You have people who are using controllers that are old and may not be as responsive as they were when they first bought them. Or people who are using older model systems that aren't able to render the game as good as someone playing a newer model system. Or the list can go on of a few different things that are making the playing field uneven. People playing on different screens with different refresh rates can have an effect. The internet speeds is definitely a big effect as well, because that affects your connectivity to the online multiplayer. And these things are all factors in making it an uneven playing field. Just playing online, because even though the platform itself may be even in nature, where the platform, the system, and the game that you're playing, even though I just said that there could be two different types of the system, but let's just say, for the sake of argument, that the platform itself, the system itself, and the controllers are all completely identical. Nothing differentiating between them at all. They all have the same hardware, they all run the same. This is an equal playing field. This means that the only thing that can possibly cause someone to win in a competitive match in this type of situation would simply to be more skilled, or lucky, or both. That's what an equal playing field consists of. But then you enter in some variables. Not counting skill, variables like internet speed would cause differentiation between people being able to play. Say one person's internet speed isn't as good as another. Say one person's internet connection isn't as stable as another person's internet connection. Having momentary jumps in internet speed can actually cause problems while playing video games online. It can cause lag, it can cause untold of other effects that can happen on a video game that can both either help or hinder a player. So because of these things, it won't be an even playing field online without the competition between systems. Even if you had a competition like a tournament and you made everything even and they were all playing in one place on a LAN like they tend to do in esports, you still have the problem elsewhere. So, esports aside, the average player is not playing on an even playing field when they're playing on the Xbox Online, or the PC, for instance. The PC is actually the most uneven playing field when you're talking among these things, because then you have variations in hardware that are much wider than variations in hardware on console. Some people may have an extremely amazing gaming rig, much like me, or people who have even better gaming rigs than I do. And then there are going to be the people who are playing on a gaming rig that is only maybe $400 or $500 that they spent on it. Maybe it's not that impressive of a gaming rig, and they literally just bought it because it's comparable to a console. So they decided to have that kind of gameplay. And that's fine. they can play on that if they want to, and that's fine. And that's everybody's prerogative as to which one they want to do and how much the money they want to spend on a PC. But then that's not the only differentiation either. Because of PC, as I said before, having so many different control options, this means that people who are playing Call of Duty could be playing it on the keyboard and mouse, on a controller, different types of controllers. Some may even be using a control scheme that is completely different from other people. That and the fact that keyboard controls are completely remappable, this means that that person that is one person playing on a keyboard may be going for different keys than someone else playing on keyboard. They may not be using the default keys. They may have something else set up. So while PC has a very uneven playing field with it, there are still plenty of people out there who enjoy playing games, though it's not nearly the number that is on console for this particular game franchise. The numbers for the Steam users, at least, for these particular games is not very high. Now, during the World War II beta, it got pretty high. It was upwards of 80 and 90,000 people playing on Steam on the World War II open beta. And getting into a match was a complete cinch. But then you look at other games in the franchise that are still popular, even on console. Games like Modern Warfare 3, Black Ops 3, and Black Ops 2, which are, coincidentally, other than World War II during the open beta, the 3 most popular games on Steam, according to player count, for daily player count. Black Ops 3 coming ahead with somewhere around 6,000, or between 3 and 6,000 players every day, whereas Modern Warfare 3 was going between 2.5 and 4,000, and Black Ops 2 was sitting pretty evenly right around 2 and 2.5 thousand players per day. Now, some people might think that that is a lot of players, but it's not. It's really not. If those games could have a number like what the World War II beta did consistently, people would play them even more often. But because of the low player count on them, as me and my friends have figured out, is that because of these lower player counts, it's a lot harder to get into a match with people. Because there's not enough people playing at once to be able to get a whole lot of different matches going. There'd be a certain number of matches that you could hit with that many players, and then after that, any of the stragglers that are left over would either have to wait for a game to finish to join into another game, or just simply stop trying to play. These become the options that become available to people on PC when the hype, I suppose, dies down on a game. Now, granted, those 3 games, a couple of them are pretty old in gaming terms. They're decently old games. So they're not brand new. They're not the newest thing on the block anymore. They're not the shiny new game. So they don't get played as much. The other Call of Duty games are a testament to that as well. Some of them sitting only in the hundreds of play counts. While I'm not saying that every Call of Duty game should be treated equally, I'm not saying that every Call of Duty game needs to be cross-platform play, especially if they don't seem to be popular enough on either the console or the PC, because the console has the same problem that PCs do. One of the biggest problems that PCs do with the player count is that, for one, the new and shiny game gets played quite a bit, as we saw in the World War II open beta. And I'm sure when the game actually launches on November 3rd, we'll see a huge surge of players come into World War II for a while. Maybe even for a few months. But after the shiny veneer of the game wears off for a lot of people, they will play the game less and less, and maybe some of them will even completely stop. The player numbers will drop. And a lot of times they'll drop drastically. Because, especially on PC, there are other games that come out constantly. People are always wanting to buy and play the new shiny toy on the block. So because there's always a new shiny toy to play on PC, this poses a problem. While it's great for the consumer because it gives them a lot of options as to what games they want to play and what game studios they may want to support and things like that, it also poses problems in play counts on these games. But if you were to merge the play counts between console and PC, while Xbox, specifically their numbers at this point, because Sony doesn't seem to want to, for business reasons, have cross-platform play be enabled on many games, and I do understand it. But beside that point, even if, because Xbox and PC can both, we know, are compatible to be done for cross-platform play, as they've shown with Gears of War 4, as well as a few other games. I believe there's about 3 pages of results on Steam just of cross-platform play-enabled games, which is not a large number of games, but it's decently sized. But if you were to merge these play counts and merge these players together, it would cause the community on the PC around this game specifically. It would improve the community of player base on the game, because they would then have the player base of the Xbox as well. Now, some people might still see this as a problem, but here's the thing. Even if keyboard and mouse were to dominate over a controller, and they didn't give the console generations the ability to have the keyboard and mouse controls as an option, even if the keyboard and mouse did dominate over controller in this sense, there's a lot higher number of people that would be using a controller than using a keyboard and mouse. And a keyboard and mouse is not infallible. Your player's skill can have an effect on how good you are at using the keyboard and mouse as well, or simply your skill at using a keyboard and mouse. So then this comes down to personal skill as to whether or not someone with a controller or someone with a keyboard is better. Whereas someone with a keyboard and mouse may have a slight advantage over the person with the controller from the get-go, the amount of skill that the person may have with the controller may completely outweigh the person with the keyboard and mouse. So even though they may be a higher skilled player, or even though they may have the advantage over the higher skilled player being on a keyboard and mouse, the controller can and has won in situations like that. While I don't think this would be all the time, it's the same thing as if you go into a match and you completely dominate and you're at the top of the leaderboards. And then the next match you go into, you don't do so well because other people in the game are more skilled than you or get luckier than you did. It's just the way the game is. And because of this higher number of players that are on controller, and because of this thing called matchmaking, and if they were able to improve it a little bit, they could make it to where there wouldn't be that many PC players in a match. Which means that unless that PC player is skilled, the PC player may not even come out on top every time. Sure, they may end up in the top 4. I'm not discounting that. I'm not discounting they may end up in the top 4 of people playing the game. At least in that regard of that particular match. But someone with a controller can still get first. Someone with a controller can still get last. Same with the keyboard and mouse. Someone with a keyboard and mouse can get first, and they could get last. I'm not discounting the fact that the keyboard and mouse is an advantage. It is. At least in aiming. But one thing the controllers do have on keyboard is movement. While keyboards are definitely remappable, and you can map omnidirectional movement on a lot of games, the joystick is just a more natural way of doing it for a lot of people. And it's just simpler that way. A lot of games, like racing games, are arguably easier with a controller than they are with a keyboard and mouse. Same with games like platformers. Platformers tend to have a simpler time when you're using the simpler controllers on a controller. So this argument can be said in a lot of different ways. It can be done in a lot of different ways. And a lot of people have differing opinions on whether or not cross-platform play is good or not. and whether or not it should be used more often. Personally, I think it should. I would absolutely love cross-platform play. Even if it was, and this is a hypothetical, of course, even if the PC was not the dominant form of control option for being able to use on these particular competitive games, even if it was at the disadvantage to players on consoles, I would still want the cross-platform play. Purely for the fact of being able to play with more people, open up your horizons to more things, to more people and more player skill. The more you open up to somebody, the more you open yourself up to experiencing other experiences, especially in gaming, experiencing how other people play the game, you can take things from the way they play the game and possibly improve how you play the game to make yourself better at the game. This is one of the reasons why people watch people play games online, such as like on Twitch. For instance, Smite players. There are a lot of professional Smite players that will stream them playing. And even just the esports matches themselves, people will watch to watch players play and see their strategies in action. So then they can take those strategies, maybe even tweak them a bit, and use them themselves and improve their own capabilities in playing the game, especially in a competitive game like Smite. And the same can be done with Call of Duty. You can do the same thing, just for some reason there's this big thing with Call of Duty where people don't tend to actually talk to one another and plan things out and strategize. Instead, it's just a shoot-'em-up fest. This might be different in competitive scenes for the game, but in my knowledge on the game from my playing of the games, just as on a casual level, that seems to be the case. It's less about strategy and more about just getting as many kills as you can, which I also get. This causes problems for us on PC when it's an objective-based game such as Overwatch or Lawbreakers, but that's beside the point. I do think that it would be good, not only for me, but it would be good for consoles as well. Maybe some console gamers might not see this, but it does open up the player bases of a lot of games for them as well too. While it may not massively increase the player bases for them to be able to play with, it would cause an increase in player base for them. Not to mention the fact that if PC and Xbox could play together, I can almost guarantee that more people would play Call of Duty more often on the PC who already own it, or have already planned on buying it for the PC. It would allow them to play more often because of the fact they have more options of games to go into now. They have more players to play with, other than just their friends. And then there's those people as well, who would be happy simply because they can play with their friend who plays on console. So, I do think that it's a good thing for the consumer and for people who play games. I think it's good for gamers. I don't think it's good for business, which is why we have problems. Because, of course, in business, if you were Sony and you heard that everything was going to have cross-platform play, or you allowed it to happen, you then open up the doors for people who would think along the lines of, well, I already have this console. I have this PC. I now have no reason to go out and buy a PS4 to be able to play with my friends because I can do it with this equipment that I already have. And I get it. It's to keep sales high, and it's to keep their sales advantage over Microsoft, with the Xboxes at least. But I also think that if you took just one thing away from consoles, it would end them. But that's a different video. But I want to thank you guys for listening to me rant about this particular topic, about cross-platform play. And I'd love to hear you guys' responses about it. So let's talk about it in the comments. Just let me know what you think about cross-platform play. Do you think this would be a great idea, especially in the specific genre of Call of Duty? Do you think it'd be too much hassle to be able to do it? Do you think it'd be too much of a problem between the players and the player bases between the console and the PC? What are your opinions on it? I'd love to hear from you guys, and as always, I always read all of the comments that come in. So, please, let's talk about it. Let's see what everybody thinks. And if you do like my content, and you want to see more of it, and you want me to make more videos and make them more often, subscribing and liking my videos, subscribing to my channel and liking my videos goes a long way to help me out with that. But I will go ahead and end this here, and I will talk to you guys later.